They said my cozy lakefront cabin was torn down because I hadn't paid a single HOA fee. But as my home vanished in the dust, I realized it wasn't just about money. It was about power. The same people enforcing every petty rule didn't know who they were dealing with. Because in my family, every one of us answered to federal authority. When the HOA tried to intimidate us, they didn't just cross a line, they stepped into the wrong house. What happens when you unleash federal force on petty neighborhood tyrants? Before all hell broke loose, our protagonist was just another face in a peaceful, tight-knit lakeside community. Weekends meant early morning coffee on the porch, with laughter drifting across the water as neighbors swapped garden tips and greeted each other by name. Life was simple and comforting, until the HOA started whispering changes. It began subtly. A letter slipped under the door, citing minor violations, unexpected fees for lawn irregularities, and regulations nobody ever mentioned before. Suddenly, vibrant wildflowers were deemed unapproved decor, and parking by the dock was questioned. These demands felt less like community upkeep and more like arbitrary power flexing. Yet, beneath the golden sunsets and friendly waves, something darker stirred. The rules weren't just enforcing order, they were building tension. Our homeowner, grounded in integrity, sensed an injustice that went beyond dollar amounts. Something about the HOA's tone hinted at pushy ambition, a hunger for control dressed as civility. As the rulebook widened and deadlines shrank, unease spread. The very place they called home began to feel off-limits. But this wasn't simply about paperwork or fines. It was where ordinary life collided with raw authority. Quiet confidence met toothless tyranny, and soon that friction would ignite a conflict nobody anticipated. Life was unraveling fast. What started as a couple of eerie letters slipped under the door turned into a torrent of demands, and our protagonist found themselves trapped in a twisted tug-of-war with a supposedly neighborly organization. First came the low-grade threats about minor violations, but as weeks passed, the tone shifted. Notices piled up, fines mounted, and a suffocating dread settled in. It began innocently enough, a gentle reminder that their wildflower garden, once a rainbow-colored sanctuary, didn't match the HOA's aesthetic uniformity. Then the lawn was too long, despite meticulous weekly mowing. The mailbox had the wrong shade, or at least the HOA claimed it did. The list grew. Every detail of their life was being micromanaged, as if compliance were a game and losing meant ruin. This whirlwind of petty rules and escalating penalties echoed real-life horror stories. One homeowner in Texas found themselves slapped with a $250 fine just because their daughter IS bike sat in the grandmother's driveway for 10 minutes. No warning, no explanation, just punishment. Another North Carolina resident feared losing their home over $4,300 in fines for parking in front of their own house, even though they hadn't done anything wrong. And in Washington state, a woman was forced to spend over $21,500 in legal fees and cut down perfectly healthy trees planted years earlier because an HOA arbitrarily changed the rules and enforced them harshly. Our homeowner's nightmare mirrored these stories. Now, every day brought a new letter, a formal notice for something they didn't do, a new demeaning demand, a fine that ballooned silently. The letters piled on the kitchen table, each one draining hope. Photographs of detailed rulebooks, bullet point clauses about fence materials or permitted shrub heights. Arcane policies that felt like traps laid intentionally. Every time they tried to clarify, the HOA's response was cold and vague. Consult the guidelines. Irregularities must be corrected immediately. No empathy, no flexibility, just an omnipresent expectation of surrender. Neighbors in a San Jose complex finally had enough and successfully recalled their out-of-control board members, hoping to erase years of unjust penalties and re-establish fairness. Our protagonists saw their neighbors fighting back. Could that be their path? Tension began overtaking each moment. Once peaceful evenings gave way to obsessive rule reading, to scanning every email, every letter, to making mental checklists. Was the trash can hidden? Is the lawn slightly uneven? There was no rest, just creeping dread that something harmless would land them a fine next. But hope flickered. Our homeowner connected with allies quietly. Neighbors who shared horror stories of being fined for leaving bikes out, displaying chalk art, or even having potted tomato plants. Common, harmless elements of home life. They realized they weren't alone in this battle against microscopic enforcement. On one particularly tense morning, a clutch of letters arrived. A single mail drop with half a dozen infractions. Some disputed, some absurd. The camera, the color of the shingles, unauthorized decorations, and an alleged parking violation. Each delivered with bureaucratic indifference, each cutting deeper. The homeowner's resolve solidified. Enough. And then came the cliffhanger, a heavier ultimatum: pay up or face a lien on the home. A lien. Suddenly, what started as petty garden policing had morphed into a direct assault on a family's security. The very ground they lived on felt unstable. Would they pay the fines and keep the peace, or fight back before their home slipped away? The tension that had been simmering in every late-night glance at the mailbox, every whispered conversation with neighbors, finally erupted in a single explosive moment. It began the morning the front gate's lock was changed without warning. Our homeowner arrived to discover their cabin, still standing physically, but metaphorically severed from the community. No access, no entry. The HOA board had executed a unilateral lockdown. Panic surged. Neighbors murmured in hushed dread. It was more than dramatic. It was a declaration of dominion, but that was only the preamble. Within hours, a lien notice slid under the front door, threatening foreclosure unless a staggering sum was paid within days. The number wasn't arbitrary. It was calculated to provoke terror. It dwarfed anything the homeowner had ever imagined being owed, yet in a twist of resolve, they refused to crumble. They brought forward every shred of evidence: photos of the once lush wildflowers deemed unaesthetic, the weekly mowing schedule, receipts for mailbox paint matching HOA-approved shades, the whispered threats from board members met with archaic rules. They found strength in their everyday normalcy, weaponized in the face of petty bureaucracy. Then came the confrontation in the community hall, a meeting you could feel in your gut before stepping inside. The board, rigid and monochrome, sat perched atop a platform. The homeowner, armed not with a weapon but with conviction, stepped into the glare. The silence was an accusation. When they spoke, their voice had the weight of everything that had been unfair: the fines, the threats, the isolation. They laid bare the truth. "This is my home," they said, "not your power play." Every violation, every fee, every attempt to push them out, it all came spilling forward. Neighbors shifted in their seats. Some faces hardened in defense of the status quo, others glowed with recognition. This wasn't just one battle, it was a mirror to their collective fear. At that moment, the HOA board's veneer cracked. One board member, a longtime neighbor turned petty tyrant, snapped in response, accusing the homeowner of being reckless, ungrateful, and troublemaking. But before the tide could fully turn, the homeowner dropped the bombshell. "I've lived by the law. I've paid dues. But I'm also federal authority." Just that hint of a move beyond paperwork. The room went cold. Silence. The homeowner held that silence, compressing decades of threats into a shatter point. The cellular hum of fear buzzed louder than any argument. Cameras clicked. The homeowner had installed them for safety after their ring cam was once forcibly removed. Their footage floated through the meeting, board members engaging in selective enforcement, laughing at one home's wildflowers, fine in place, then delivering a warning at another's. It was unmistakable. The board hadn't just crossed boundaries, they'd been caught exploiting them. Suddenly, the room divided. People leaned in, jaws clenched. The showdown had ignited. The homeowner's words echoed like a gavel. "You tried to destroy my home, but I won't back down." There was no riot, only a seismic shift. The HOA president, pale and shaking, realized the game had flipped. A whisper spread. "They have the law on their side." Cameras whirred, necklines stiffened, voices that once dared not contradict now questioned motives. The homeowner walked out as though the ground had shifted beneath every foot. But they weren't done. They knew the HOA would strike back, but would they still enforce the lien? Would they escalate to legal action? Would they attempt to dismiss the evidence, the video, and the same legal protections the homeowner had rights to? As they stood by the now broken gate, staff thronged around frantically. Behind them, the hushed uproar still echoed. A final line hung in the air, quiet, resolute. They thought they could bury us under petty rules and fines, but they just unleashed what they never should have tested. When the boardroom showdown ended, the tension didn't just dissipate, it transformed. In the days that followed, the HOA's board scrambled to regain composure. The homeowner's unwavering stand and hint at federal backing had rattled them, yet the fight wasn't over. Within a week, the lien threatening foreclosure vanished. The homeowner received notice that all previously issued fines had been rescinded, voided in one decisive stroke. The HOA, recognizing the weight of being publicly outmaneuvered, quietly removed its most aggressive penalties. This moment was deeply satisfying, not because it was expected, but because it was earned. It transformed the homeowner from a beleaguered target into a symbol of resilience. Across the neighborhood, whispers evolved into conversations. Neighbors who once avoided conflict now felt emboldened to speak out. A communal energy emerged, one of shared frustration finally converted into collective empowerment. The HOA shifted gears. In a move unimaginable 2 weeks prior, the board issued a general apology. They hosted a meeting in the community hall, this time inviting residents to share concerns openly. Transparency, once a foreign concept there, seeped into the room. Behind closed doors, the HOA board faced more than regret. A third-party audit was launched to review financial and procedural conduct, owed partly to pressure from the homeowner's supporters and whispers of inconsistent enforcement creeping into local media. Board members caught in the crossfire resigned or were voted out in a subsequent recall vote. New leadership emerged, committed by necessity to rebuilding trust and instituting fair dispute procedures. The homeowners' stand echoed beyond the community. Across the state, tales of David versus Goliath struggles with overreaching HOAs began circulating. One homeowner in Charlotte, who'd been fined over $12,000 for previously approved window replacements, found legal vindication and a $75,000 settlement, along with lien removal, echoing a similar arc of pushback and opportunity. Another Arizona resident, fined repeatedly for offering free water to neighbors in sweltering heat, rallied their community and mounted a legal challenge, pushing back against petty bureaucracy with public goodwill. Meanwhile, in Santa Clara, an elderly couple defeated their HOA in a marathon 7-year battle, winning $1.8 million for damages and emotional distress after the association ignored a dangerous sinkhole and mold issue. Together, these stories form a tapestry of resistance, ordinary people confronting extraordinary overreach and winning. Beyond headlines and victories, this saga underscores real legal truth. Associations must follow their own rules, no shortcuts, no exceptions. Take the case of the disabled veteran whose HOA demanded removal of an approved wheelchair-accessible driveway. The court sided with the homeowner because the HOA failed to substantiate its claims. Eventually, the decision was upheld on appeal. From a broader standpoint, unresolved HOA conflicts can damage property values, erode community trust, and spark expensive litigation. Yet structured resolution through mediation or arbitration offers a path toward peace before things escalate. Guides for HOAs stress proactive dispute management, clear communication, and ethical governance. tools that could have prevented this fight entirely if embraced earlier. For our homeowner, the house is more than bricks and beams. It's a stand against intimidation. The wildflower garden regained its place, the mailbox stands unjudged, and dinner on the dock is once again peaceful. But the emotional scars linger. The community, too, carries both memory and caution. Yet it's a community strengthened, not by uniformity or rules, but by shared values of fairness and the courage to contest them when violated. This isn't just a story of retaliation. It is a testament to what happens when one family refuses to be silenced, when law, courage, and community converge. They aimed to own our home through petty enforcement, but instead they awakened an entire neighborhood. This complete narration flows naturally from the shocking opener through escalating conflict, climactic confrontation, and satisfying resolution. It's emotionally immersive, story-driven, and structured to maximize retention, ideal for voiceover in your YouTube video. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments to tone, pacing, or specific scenes, or if you're ready to move to any visuals or edit notes.